We'll now call the Legislation and Rules Committee hearing for Wednesday, August 7th, 2024 to order. Please call the roll.
Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan.
Here.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Vice Chair Velasquez.
Present.
Alderman Aldridge. Chair Valmer.
Present.
President Green. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderman Aldridge. We have 4 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Quorum being present, I'll move to approve the minutes of Tuesday, July 30th, 2024.
Second.
So somebody has to move.
Oh, I thought you said.
I entertain a motion.
I'm sorry. I move that we approve the minutes of Tuesday, July 30th, 2024.
Entertain a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Vice Chair Velasquez.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge. Chair Valmer.
Aye.
President Green. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderman Aldridge. We have 5 aye votes.
5 aye votes. By that, you have approved the minutes of July 30th, 2024. We will go to board bills for review. 75 and 76. The sponsor is not here. With that, I believe we have amendments. Hopefully he will show up and we will take those up for the first time. We have Board Bill 61, Committee Substitute as amended. I believe Alderman Browning, you have some amendments to this. You're still letting 60. This is still dead, right?
Oh, yeah, I'm still holding that for now, yeah. You may take that up after. I don't want it on this ballot.
Please. I thought you were waiting for Father May I. All right, please proceed with your, you have amendments to number 61, Committee Substitute as amended.
Yes, and thank you, and good afternoon to the committee and to the members of the public who are here with us today. Try to be quick about this because I see Alderman Cone walking in. We have 3 amendments in front of us today, and these amendments have been drafted in coordination with the mayor's office. The extra week provided us a little more time to have some more discussions about how to make this implementable and feasible. And so in that spirit, we are offering these amendments. So the first amendment that we have in front of us is titled Amendment Number 3 to Board Bill 61, Committee Substitute as amended. That will be changing the effective date from July 1st, 2027 to July 1st, 2029, giving it 2 more years. That would be 4.5 years from now, giving us plenty of time to make this transition. So at this time, I would ask your favorable consideration of adopting Amendment Number 3 for Board Bill 61, Committee Substitute as amended.
Do we have any questions of the sponsor in regard to Amendment Number 3? Seeing no, I will then entertain a motion to adopt Amendment Number 3 to Board Bill Number 61, Committee Substitute as amended.
I move that we adopt Amendment Number 3 to Board Bill Number 61, Committee Substitute as amended.
Entertain a second.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Alderman Cone.
Pass.
Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Vice Chair Velasquez.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge. Chair Valmer.
Aye.
President Green. We have 6 aye votes. I'm sorry. Alderman Cone.
Aye.
We have 7 aye votes.
Okay, by your vote, we have adopted Amendment Number 3 to Board Bill Number 61, Committee Substitute as amended, With
Thank
that,
you.
we'll go to Amendment Number 5.
Well, amendment number 4 first.
Oh, I only have two. Where's number 4?
Number 4 is exact same
Savings
thing.
paper. All right. Thank you very much.
Exact same thing as the last amendment, just a different place in the bill where the effective date was listed. So we're making sure that we're thorough and getting it right in every place in the bill, 2027 to 2029. So I'd ask your favorable consideration.
Okay. Any questions of the sponsor as to this amendment number 4? Turn around on the back page. They're saving trees now. Any questions of the sponsor in regard to this amendment? Seeing no questions, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adopt amendment number 4 to Board Bill number 61, Committee as amended,
So moved.
Previous roll.
Hearing no objection, previous roll, we've adopted amendment number 4. With that, we'll go to amendment numero 5, number 5. Alderman
Okay.
Brown, please proceed.
So amendment number 5, again, in coordination with the mayor's office, trying to get this to a place where everyone can feel comfortable with it. We wanted to make sure that we are considering the qualifications for the Director of Transportation. After much discussion, we came to the conclusion that there needs to be a consistency with the qualifications for the Director of Public Utilities, the President of the Board of Public Service, and this new Director of Transportation. As it currently exists in the charter, all 3 of those positions have the same qualifications required. And so we are making it so that that is the case with this new change as well, that the same qualification would exist that exists now. I'm happy to take any of your questions on this.
Do we have any questions of the sponsor? President Green has a question. Please proceed.
So as I read your amendment here, essentially, we're narrowing it, the qualifications back to saying that they have to have direct engineering work in order to be director of.
That's correct. So very much believe that there needs to be an engineer somewhere in the streets department because a professional licensed engineer is required to sign off on any drawings or plans that are being put forward by that department. It's an essential part of them being able to take more responsibility for our streets. And in this case, having that at the top makes sense. It was also, again, one of the asks of the mayor's office that they felt very strongly about. And was something that we felt in the spirit of compromise and getting this to a place where people could be supportive of it, that this would be a change that we found acceptable.
Okay, I'm going to be a no on this amendment. I think that it's much better for these types of qualifications to be done via ordinance rather than put in the charter. This particular item, advocates have been asking for almost a decade for this to be removed from the charter. If you look at other cities, they don't require that engineering piece. You can have a planning degree, you can have a transportation management degree, you could have ample experience. And I think if we are wanting to set up ourselves to be able to recruit directors, potentially by poaching them from other cities, that we should not be so stringent as to say this is the only type of experience. I think someone in the team could have experience, but it doesn't necessarily need to be the director. And so I'm going to be a no on that. And I have an amendment after this that instead would change the language to allow for qualifications for the position to be set via ordinance.
Okay, well, I completely understand that perspective, and I don't even disagree with it. I think that in the case here, what our aim was is to keep the qualifications the same as these other 2 positions, which this board bill does, or this board bill and this charter amendment does not address at this time. And so I still view it as a potential for us in the future to talk about the qualifications for other positions, and that might be its own change. But at this time, it was not be possible for us to change the qualifications for all 3 of those positions in this bill. And so that's not something that we wanted to take on. And ultimately, that's the compromise we had to make so that we could make sure that this fully passed and signed so that it could get on the ballot for November.
And I understand that, and I respect the work that you're doing. I just feel like this is in particular been something that our advocates have been asking for a long time. And if we have the opportunity where we are kind of opening up this section of the charter and making these changes, I think it's important that we kind of listen to community voice in this, and that's not to negate any of the work that you've been doing to try to reach compromise. We tried to reach compromise with the mayor's office on this as well. And to me, I think the compromise would be having these qualifications determined by ordinance, because qualifications can also change over time. And what we may deem as necessary for a position in 2024 may not be the same necessary for a position in 2034 even. And so I think it still gives the administration a say in what those qualifications look like, but it gives us a little bit more flexibility rather than having to go back to voters every time, maybe it changes on the types of things that we need to see from directors in our city. So my no vote is not directed at you at all. It's mostly to make sure that that advocates still have a voice in this conversation, given the length of time that I know they've been asking for this particular change.
Of course. Any other questions?
Anyone else from Alderman Cohen, please proceed.
I'll also be voting no. President Green took the words right out of my mouth. I think that something that I've pondered about for many years is why we have qualifications in the charter. Those qualifications, as everyone knows, requires 60% of the voters to make that decision. And qualifications, certainly have changed since 1914, let alone, over the past decade or what have you, whether that's degree programs being phased out, degree programs being created, certifications changing. There's all sorts of reasons why we would want to be able to do that and set those, criteria via ordinance or specifically positions that are appointed or named in the charter itself. So I'm very much of the mindset of, let's try to provide a framework in the charter and then allow for the kind of more nuts and bolts to be administered through ordinances. So I would support the president's amendment, but on this one, again, not directed at you, but would like to see something that would bring us into consistency across the board.
Absolutely, completely understood. I think the conversation about qualifications and whether they should be in the charter or not is entirely new discussion that I would absolutely love to engage in, because again, I very much agree with the spirit of what you're saying, but I think that's a conversation that occurs somewhat separate from this bill, and that this bill is really about changing the mission of the department and what the department is going to be in the future so that we can better address our streets. And then the position of that director, while I still think very important and interesting, is really a niche discussion among the broader idea of this bill.
Thank you, Alderman. I don't disagree with that, but the fact remains that there are qualifications currently in this bill. Your amendment would amend those qualifications that are currently in this bill. So this is the time to talk about qualifications for this specific role. Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? Alderman Aldridge, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm just going to be voting present on this. One, I want to thank you as a sponsor for working very hard on this. And I talked at length about the piece of legislation. This is just something that me and you haven't been able to discuss. So I don't know if this is a good thing that we'll be establishing it in the charter or a bad thing. And I know we already struggle to get certain positions. So don't know if this would be something that would make it where we wouldn't be able to necessarily find a director if we don't have the right qualifications. So it's not that I'm against it, it's just something that I haven't thought about, and we can have a conversation about it on the front end. So, but I appreciate your work on it.
Sure thing. The conversations have certainly been evolving over the last few weeks, as you might imagine, as we try to talk to the administration to figure out what will work for everybody. Obviously, we, with all of these, are looking at potential for a veto or potential for other things that might happen, and so things have been moving at a fast pace certainly, but also we're trying to find a place where we can all agree on a general direction. And so, as with the date changes, that's something I heard from some of you all about being more comfortable. And I think that in the end, that's a good thing that we are all a little more comfortable with that and a little more time to work on it. I'll mention that the current language that exists in the charter right now has not prevented us from getting a director of the streets. So I don't think it would be a problem, but also in that 4.5 years we have before this goes into effect, there's plenty of time for that other discussion to happen around qualifications. And maybe that is a discussion about the broader qualifications in our all of our departments so that we can understand that we have a need for attracting employees. I think it was mentioned if we're going to poach someone from a different city, but the first thing that we would need to do there is raise the salaries because right now we're not poaching anybody with what we're offering. So it's all part of a bigger discussion, and I'm absolutely here for it, and I thank you for your comments.
All right, any further comments as to this amendment? No further comments, thank you very much. With that, I believe you've disclosed yourself, so there's nothing else you have to say. All right, with that, please call the roll. All right, a motion, to adopt amendment number 5 to Board Bill number 61, committee substitute, as amended twice. So moved. Entertain a second.
Second.
All right, please call the roll.
Alderman Cone.
No.
Alderman Narayan.
No.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Vice Chair Velazquez. No. Alderman Aldridge. Chair Ballmer.
Aye, I won't leave you.
We have one aye vote.
Green is here too.
I'm sorry. President Green.
No.
We have one aye vote, 5 no votes, and 1 voted present.
All right, by your vote, we have failed to adopt amendment number 5 to Board Bill number 61, CS quadruple A. If you are finished, we'll gather your seat, and we will now, before us.
Chair, I have amendment number 6.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to go through. Since it's before me, there's no number on it, but we will amend this, and if you would, to make it proper, this is amendment number 6 to Board Bill number 61, committee substitute as
amended.
There's no double A on the thing to make it proper. Put that into the
Madam
record.
Clerk, if you could please
Okay.
make.
Alderman Browning, we will now entertain President Green's amendment.
So amendment number 6 is basically striking out on page 2, line 13, striking out and shall have substantial administrative experience in transportation, and instead replacing it with and shall have qualifications to be determined by ordinance, so that we are, at a later date, we can discuss the qualifications of this office rather than enshrining it into the charter.
Okay, any questions of the sponsor of this amendment? Alderman Cone, please proceed.
I just want to go on record. I love this amendment. Thank you.
Remember, this is business, not emotional. Thank you very much. All right, any further questions? None? With that, I'll entertain a motion to adopt amendment number 6, Board Bill number 61, committee substitute, as amended.
Second.
Okay, please call the roll.
Previous roll? No. Oh, nope. Objection. Objection to my own previous.
One more of those and you're out of here, sir.
Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Aye. Vice Chair Velazquez.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge.
Present.
Chair Ballmer.
No, just because I like Alderman Brown.
President Green. President Green.
Aye.
I have 5 aye votes, 1 no, and 1 present.
By your vote, we have adopted amendment number 6 to Board Bill number 61, committee substitute, as amended. We have no further amendments. With that, would you like to close on your bill, sir?
Yes, and can I get a copy of that amendment? Finding in the drive, and would like to know what was done to the bill.
Here, let me.
You got fantastic arms.
Yeah, I have very long arms.
Sorry about that.
I need a paper clip though to make it work.
What you were trying to do.
Okay. All right. With that, I think we've really covered over the last two meetings the potential that Department of Transportation could bring for our city. Not only does it help us compete better with other peer cities that have been doing similar moves, including cities as small as Cape Girardeau. I'm not kidding. Cape Girardeau has a Department of Transportation. So we are looking to move our city in a better direction where we are caring for all road users and moving away from the fragmented and inequitable system that we have now. Moving to a place where instead of just maintenance, we are really taking in the complete experience of everybody out on our streets to make sure that no matter where they're headed in our city, they can do so safely. So with that, I'm willing to entertain any additional questions that people have about this bill, but really look forward to taking this step and sending this to the voters so that we can let them express with their voice how much this is needed in our city.
All right, any further discussion on the board bill before us?
Mr. Clerk, or Mr. Chair, sorry. Madam Clerk, could I please be added as a co-sponsor?
So noted.
Anyone wish to do that also, please make note of it now.
Madam Clerk, add me as well.
So noted.
Add Aldridge as well.
We add Narayan as well, please. Thank you.
All right. With
So
that,
noted.
discussion is closed. And with that, we will take a vote on board bill. First, I'll entertain a motion to adopt board bill number 61, committee substitute, as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Vice Chair Velazquez.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge.
Aye.
Chair Valmer.
Aye.
President Green.
Aye.
We have 7 aye votes.
Where's the nine?
We have passed out board bill number 61, committee substitute, as amended. Thank you, Alderman Browning. Very good. All right. Alderman Cone, are you ready for number 75 and 76? Since we have not heard these, we'll go with those first. You have 75 and 6 in front of you still?
No. Just the,
Does anyone have 70, do we still have 75 and 76 in front of us, anyone? I don't have it in front of me.
It's in the drive. I know that. I'm looking at it presently.
We're at 75.
I have, I have the summary, and I'm familiar with it myself, but if anyone else requires that to be in front of them, or you have the drive? If everyone is fine with that on the record? All right, do you have any amendments before we proceed, sir, to?
There is a committee substitute that's in the folder for Board Bill 75.
Okay,
I'd like to put before the committee.
has everyone got that? I'll call up my fancy phone here. I got mine. Okay. Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and at the request of the chair, I am going to try and keep this as brief as I possibly can. The board bill that is before us, Board Bill 75, was recommended by the Charter Commission to move, the original board bill as it was submitted was to move municipal elections to a presidential election cycle, essentially, and then also at the same time moving county office holders to a nonpartisan ranked choice voting method. There were a couple concerns that were raised, and well, a number of concerns that were raised around the switching of the timing of our municipal elections. Some of those concerns are not going to be addressed by this committee substitute, but what the committee substitute does is essentially move aldermanic and mayor, comptroller, president board ENA election cycles, municipal elections, to that summer-fall calendar, but not falling on presidential election years. And believe it or not, it took 3 people, and well, probably actually a few more than that, and a couple hours to go through calendaring this out. And I'd like to especially thank Christine Ingrassia and Cecilia Boyers in the President's office for spending a number of those hours with me personally earlier this week and over the weekend to do so, so that we could have this ready for you today. What this will do, part of the concern with moving it to the presidential election cycles or moving it in general to the August-November ballot is the state has a statute that prohibits municipal office holders from serving more than 4 years. So anytime you're moving, our swearing in is typically the third week in April. You would be moving our swearing in date to about 8 months, 9 months out to January. So that's adding 9 months to a term. So we have to eventually shorten the terms if we're going to go to that August, November election cycle. That there's no question about it. There was no way of getting around it. We couldn't impact, just the mayor and odd wards or just the president and even wards. We had to do that across the board for everyone. To avoid the presidential election cycles, which I think, there's some folks who have, the thought process there's higher turnout, we'd get, better representation in these elections. But there's another school of thought that it would create barriers to access for people who are wanting to run for office. And I think, we're coming fresh out of a, primary as of yesterday, where $20 million was spent in one federal race that could have had, certainly sucked all of the oxygen out of the room. I'll be kind. And so trying to, talk about things that are important to voters at a municipal level is difficult to convey those messages in that type of an election cycle. And so we never know from year to year what those races are going to look like, how they're going to be defined, what the money is going to be like in those races. And, to prevent people from having to raise a treasure chest to campaign for local offices, I believe it's best to keep them off of the presidential election cycle, but to help, get people into the habit of voting in August, November, we can still move them to that kind of cycle, but they would be staggered so that they get off of the presidential election years and still get folks into the habit of voting in August, November. Other cities do have this model. And in this case, what would end up happening is instead of currently we have alderpersons in odd years on the same cycle as the mayor and comptroller, that would not change. But then every 2 years, the voters would go out and vote for even or odd wards. Under this new model, it would be staggered by 1 year, and then they'd still retain their 4-year terms, except for the 1 year where we moved them to that fall calendar. And so underneath the committee substitute, that would first take place with the even wards in the President Board of Aldermen's race, 2027. I think the little matrix was handed out for folks. So President Board of Aldermen and even wards would run for their first time in April, March of 2027 would be, April, March 2027. And then they would have an election in 2030. So they'd have a shortened term for that 2027 election cycle. And then the next election that would be impacted would be their fall election in 2030, where they would be then sworn in for a full 4-year term. The next municipal election cycle, the last municipal election cycle for mayor and odd wards that would happen in spring would be spring of 2029. They would be elected to a term of 33 months roughly, and then in 2032, they would then be reelected to their full 4-year term. So as a result of that, we would be off of the kind of general ballot and primary ballot for state and federal races. The county offices would remain on those ballots. So there was really no need to touch those offices and bring them over to kind of the municipal ranked choice voting system that we have in place today. So they would maintain their current election cycle and status and all of that. That was removed from the bill. And then really we're focusing on just getting the municipal election cycle moved to that August-November time period. And with that, I'll entertain any questions.
All right, and do we have, let's go through the committee real quick here. It's probably the easiest way this way. Alderman Narine, any questions of the sponsor?
No, I just would like to hear more from the general public on this, because I do believe it kind of cuts both ways. I think if you have people showing up to vote and they're not anticipating a municipal election, could lead to some really bizarre outcomes. We already see that sometimes with different propositions and amendments and things like that, where people don't even know they're there and then are just essentially flipping a coin. And I would just like to hear from more of the general public about where they stand on this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, too, would like to hear a little bit from the public, but also since we have the Democratic chair in the room, I don't want to put him on the spot, but if he had any comments or insight on it, if not, we understand. Okay.
Okay.
He said, okay, too, that he would speak on it? Okay. That's Democratic.
Asking someone to speak publicly on it?
Democratic Chair Ben Borgmeyer is in the room.
We will allow that since this is our first hearing on this. If you like, please approach the dais. We'll have to swear you in. If you raise your right hand, get next to the microphone, please, sir. They're a little touchy. All right. Do you swear the testimony you're going to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. You'll start by stating your name for the record. You might want to pick the microphone up.
Okay.
You're a little taller than
About same size.
the average bear.
Same hair too.
Yes, certainly.
I want to make sure that I'm looking at the right version. So the proposed version is that these elections go in odd numbers, not the even. Is that correct?
So thank you. It would not be quote-unquote odd and even numbered years. It would be the first election for even wards and President Board of Aldermen would be in 2030, which is an even year.
Okay.
And then the first election for mayor, comptroller, and odd wards would be 2031, which is an odd year. So that kind of
Okay, so
lines up
that's
odd
what I'm
wards
trying
on
to.
odd years,
so
even wards on even years.
going forward, are these elections on the general primary general election like we just had, or are they on the interim cycle?
They wouldn't fall on a presidential election cycle like we just had.
Okay,
So
that's
on
I wanted
the
to be on.
matrix that you have, the presidential election cycles are the years that are highlighted. So
Okay.
at the top, there's 2024, 2028, 2032, 2036. Those are all presidential election cycles. And then, you know, the kind of mid-year or midterm cycles would be, you know, the ones that fall in between that. So 2034, 2030, et cetera.
Okay, so then going forward, municipal elections would not be on the same ballot as presidential and.
Just the presidential. There would be some overlap with midterm every once in a while because they are on even years.
Okay. I think I'm understanding that from, okay.
So that would essentially, the top of the ticket would be the congressional office holder, and then the county offices, and then municipal offices underneath that.
Okay. I think that makes, so, hold on, just trying to make sure I am reading your thing correctly. So president of the board in even wards
On
would
even years,
be elected on even years,
every 4 years.
every 4 years, and mayor, comptroller, odd wards would be elected on odd numbered years the
Correct.
next year?
Right.
Okay.
So they're staggered by 1 year instead of 2 years.
So mayor, comptroller, odd wards will have only municipal elections on ballot going forward, and PBOA, and even wards will be on ballots with everything from U.S. Senate to down to,
Potentially U.S. Senate, because Senate terms are 6 years, not 4 years. So they're not going to overlap precisely.
okay.
So, and so yes, on occasion that might be the case, but it wouldn't be every 4 years, obviously, because they have 6-year, 4-year terms.
Okay, I think I'm making sense of this now. Thank you. Sorry about that. I just wanted that clarification before Ben talked.
All right, no worries. Mr. Borgmeyer, you may proceed. Remember, you're still under oath.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to try to make sense of it in my head just real quick, just one more time.
Sure.
Okay, so my understanding is we're going to have elections in '25. That's going to be the mayor, the comptroller. That will be also the odd wards, correct? In 2025.
That's
And then
correct.
2027, then it'll be the even wards, and you'll have the president, board of aldermen again. 2029 will be then the mayor again. 2030, that will be the start of the August, Novembers, correct? 2030, and that will be for the even, so president, board of aldermen, and even, no, sorry, mayor,
No, even.
right,
2030 would be.
yes.
No.
No, so it's going to be,
27 is the even, and then it'd be 2030.
27 is the first,
yes,
it's the last municipal election that's on the spring ballot.
Got it.
2027 is the last municipal election that would be on a spring ballot for the even wards and PBOA. The 2030 election cycle would be the first election that would be on the fall ballot for the even wards and the president board of aldermen. 2029 would be the last election cycle for the mayor and mayor, comptroller, odd ward alderpersons on that spring muni cycle. And then 2031 would be their first election cycle on the fall election cycle.
oh, okay. I'm sorry, so I just want to make sure, so we're talking not midterms, where you're going to put them on this bill, because it's not what I have. The last committee substitute I had was July or something, so you're talking about something that's different from that bill?
The committee substitute has the last
Yeah, so right here, it just says November 2030, every 4 years thereafter. So,
correct.
and then there's.
That's for the even, 2030 is the first year that the even wards would have a fall ballot.
Yeah, okay. But as far as elections, that will be the, 2029 will be the last year there'll be a municipal election, not in a spring, like in a, well, I'll call it odd number year.
Correct.
Okay, so yeah, I think I understand. So essentially, this will align all elections with the August, November cycle. Just speaking purely from an administrative standpoint, what it will do, the primary benefit would be, it basically would eliminate the March primary. One thing about the March primary, it's very difficult to do, is to turn around equipment, so going from March to April in that quick cycle. Also, too, with the nonpartisan scheme that St. Louis uses now, there is obviously discussion before the March primary, ideally. Then after the March primary, there should be another debate, I think, before the April election, because then you'll have the two candidates that the March primary is honed down. So that, if it's extended to August, November, it would give a longer period for the public to discuss candidates. From a cost perspective, it would eliminate that March primary, which stands alone, because right now, so the March primary, St. Louis bears the entire cost of that. If it was put on an August, November cycle, it would share costs with the state and any other entities that participate in the election. So just from a pure administrative standpoint, it makes sense, I think, to do it.
The other benefit of moving it to an August, November election cycle with a swearing in January, and I think many of us have experienced this, but there's a very tight turnaround period between the April election for municipal office holders and swearing in. It's roughly about 2 weeks. So when you're especially talking about the mayor's race, I've now been alderperson for 3 administrations, That is not a lot of time to get a transition team in place and then move into that office. So having an election in November with a swearing in 2 months later, that does afford you more opportunity to prepare for the office moving into it. There are going to be other things that we need to address that are outlined in the committee substitute, such as the beginning of our sessions, because currently our sessions start in spring, so this would move it to January instead of April. And then, there's a couple other items that we'll have to figure out, like photos in the hallway.
All right, do we have any questions of the sponsor or the speaker? Alderman Aldridge, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So from your standpoint, Mr. Berg, Mr. Ben, I don't want to mess up your last name. Basically, this benefits the Board of Election due to costs. Because we can't anticipate any hoping that this would help turnout, because this would be another change within the last 3 years of voting that we've done either through Prop D or that we've done with the reduction of board alderperson, and then now this would be at the charter change that would go into effect, which I'll ask the sponsor because I'm still confused on when it will go into effect, but this would be another change that voters will have to get educated on, so maybe a hiccup at the beginning, but from your standpoint, this could help financially from the Board of Election.
Yeah, I think, not for the Board of Election, but for the city, because the city
Well,
also.
city.
But as far as I'm sorry, I'm a little brain dead. It's been a long couple days, but
Thank you for all the work you've done
Oh, no problem.
in the last 24 hours. Sure you
Just
didn't get no sleep. And,
speaking of hiccups at the beginning, but, so this is to say that as far as the turnout naturally, just naturally, is greater in August and November. I mean, you can compare any city municipal race with what you get in August, November, and the turnout is almost always higher in August. Oh, bless you. I did a summary some time ago. I think I directed a letter to all members of the board just comparing March, April to August, November, both midterm elections, presidential elections, mayoral election versus, president board election. And in that chart, I think with only one exception, that the turnout was always higher in August, November. To Alderman Cohen's point, as far as a public, aspect of educating the public, things like that. I mean, I'm speaking just, I think, from an administrative standpoint, I guess, in some sense, more bang for the buck. If you're getting more turnout, more participation in the election, I think anytime there's more participation, period, I think the public feels more confident. So I do think there is the administrative standpoint as far as the turnaround from March to April, which is a very short turnaround in the election. Ask any election board in the state of Missouri. No one has that short a turnaround in any election. From a cost perspective to the city, there'd be a cost savings. And I think 3, you also would see higher turnout August and November every year. So.
Okay, I guess to the sponsor. So if I'm not mistaken, originally from the Charter Commission and in your previous committee or your board bill, when it comes to approval voting for the county office, was that something that the Charter Commission recommended?
That was something that my understanding is that it was something that was added to the Charter Commission at the last minute based off of recommendations from a special interest group.
So the Charter Commission voted on the approval voting that they sent the ballot? Because, I mean, they changed language throughout the process, but did they vote on the approval?
Yes, they did, and they did so while that was also on the same ballot as the presidential election cycle. So we're not having the municipal election cycles on that same the municipal election on the same ballot as the presidential. It would be on 2031 and every 4 years after.
Correct. Get the year part that we're talking about, but the approval part where you have to, the top 3 will go into the runoff, so it would be in November. That's struck out of this language.
Correct, for the committee substitute.
And that is because of?
It's no longer, one, feedback that I've received since my initial bill was introduced, but also it's no longer on that presidential election cycle. They're county offices, not municipal offices. And even with the original bill as it was submitted, not all county offices objected to it because the circuit attorney under state statute.
Well, yeah, because we can't control
Right,
that
so
per se.
which that's also confusing that you have one county office that's not following that rule and all the other ones are. So we took the county offices out.
Okay. Getting back to the timetable, just so I'm clear, because I was confused. So,
There's a helpful little matrix in front of everyone.
yeah, clearly not that helpful if we all got questions. So,
It's, like I acknowledged at the beginning of this, took many brains put together in a room for several hours.
thanks for all the help to
get
the
to
mini
this.
brain.
Yes.
So in 2025, the mayor, comptroller, and odd wards that's when they would run for office in that August and November.
No. So I'm going to take, just to make this easy for everyone, I'm going to go line by line. Mayor, comptroller, odd wards, currently on the same election cycle, would remain on the same election cycle. I have 2025 in there because that's next spring. So I'm just throwing in future elections, for the foreseeable future here. So that election does not change. 2025 remains the same. In 2029, the mayor and comptroller and odd wards would be elected on that spring ballot, but they would be elected to a term of 33 months. And then, so that's their last municipal election cycle is the one that's highlighted, 2029, last spring muni election cycle. 2031 would be the first fall election cycle for the mayor, comptroller, and odd wards.
Say that last part one more time.
2031 would be the first fall municipal election cycle for the mayor, comptroller, and odd wards. And they would be elected in fall and then sworn in January of 2032.
And just a step 1 year backwards, for the even wards, that would happen in 2030?
Correct. So that's what Mr. Borgmeyer was referencing. Article 2, Section 1, the first sentence, or the first highlighted sentence here, starting in 2030 and every 4 years thereafter, the president of the Board of Aldermen and the even wards would start in 2030. That's when we would move over to the fall election cycle. And then commencing in 2031 is when the mayor and odd wards would move over to the fall municipal election cycle.
In that 2030, because I can't always remember, in that 2030 for the even wards, what other races would be on the ballot outside alderperson?
I don't know what that ballot would look like.
I mean, like, so it'd be Congress, but I'm trying to think, I don't know if it'd be like Senate. That's what I mean, like, what other, because what I'm getting to, in one race in 2030, you'll have maybe Congress and U.S. Senate, and then the year right after that, you'll just have alders, comptroller, and mayor.
Right.
Which
is what we
would have probably less turnout than the year before because you have not those bigger races where more money is being poured into, correct?
Just to speak, Congressional District 1 would be on every single, every midterm ballot.
But it wouldn't be it wouldn't be on 2031.
Right, that's the last one, correct? 2031 is the last, yeah.
And what are we in 24? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
Mayor.
And then moving forward, if we go off this cycle, I think this is what so and then 2034, the even would be elected, and then that next year, so it's not every 2 years of the way that, so in 2035, then the mayor, comptroller, and odd, you're saying no, he's saying yes.
There's no 2035.
There would be in the new cycle. It would be on the August, November 2035 for the mayor and boards.
Huh.
So clearly this sounds like I know we got that special committee. I think that's one of the things that maybe we should And I've not pushed back against the charter recommendations. I think they all need to move forward. But I think if we're going to get this right, maybe this is one of those pieces that go to the special committee, because between the Board of Elections commissioner, who I have the respect for, who does this work, and us trying to do the legislation, seems to be a little confusing to be able to get this out today and vote on it on the floor to send it to the ballot. But I think I got more questions than answers, but I'll just probably be a no on this because we need, I'm confused.
All right. Any other questions from the committee?
Think I have.
President Green, please proceed.
Okay, so I think my mind is getting more wrapped around this. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, or the concern I have is about it being confusing, having some municipal elections on even years and some on odd years. So we wouldn't be having 2 years anymore between those staggered, they'd be back to back. Is that what I'm understanding?
I agree with you. I for some reason thought it'd be all just with the midterms. That's what I thought the framework was. I didn't,
Okay.
to have something in back to back like that, I don't see the benefit really at all.
Yeah, I mean, to make this even more confusing for people, not that I want to do that, but we would still have March, April elections in some cases. So school board would be one of those situations. So this is not, we cannot change the elections for school board.
Correct.
Right? So school board is still going to have March, April elections.
Some school board, because some school board is already on the, correct me if I'm wrong, it's already on the November ballot. Some of the seats are on the November ballot, some of them are on the April
But
ballot.
as we're talking about, how this is 1 year staggered versus, I mean, this is all kind of, they're ideas, right? We're talking about ideas here. And so this is one proposal. The primary feedback that I had received was, the elections on the presidential election cycle years. Right now, the mayors in the spring election cycles that we have right now, the turnout in a mayoral election is way higher, generally speaking, than it is for even wards and the president and board of aldermen race. I mean, in some cases, while I've been down here, we've had twice the number of turnout for mayor's races as we've had for president, board of aldermen, and even ward. I used to joke around that one of the even ward colleagues that I had got elected with the same number as a high school class president. That is not something that never goes away. There's always going to be dynamics at play. But this is just another idea to have a discussion around.
And I'll be clear, I support moving elections to an August, November ballot. I think that in terms of the budget cycle, it just makes a lot more sense to have it on that cycle. So it's not literally folks take office the middle of April, have the budget introduced that next week into E&A. It gives nobody time to get acclimated to that. And then it's this 1.5 month rush basically to get that done and through the board before the fiscal year begins on July 1. And my understanding is we did look at, if elections stayed the same, we were to move fiscal year of the city, that creates a whole bunch of credit rating issues that we don't want to get into. And so, I see the benefit of that is allowing us to really start a budget discussion January 1 and continue that until, final passage of a budget July 1, much kind of like the federal government does. But I have concern. I think that they either both need to be on even years or both need to be on odd years. Because I think the back-to-back, one on even, one on odd is I'm confused. And so I think that the normal public is going to get confused with that. Speaking from the, point of view of somebody who got elected on a midterm election ballot, I did not find it all that much different from running on a regular municipal election cycle. And so I don't necessarily take, I think the same pause, having gone through that some other folks do with regard to the midterm presidential cycle. Although I will say presidential has a much higher turnout than midterms do, but there's not a huge. I mean, there's still a good 15-point difference between municipal elections and midterm elections. But just from personal experience, I didn't find it all that much difficult or different running on that election cycle than on a typical election cycle. My concern more is I think if we're going to do this, they either both need to be on even years or both need to be odd years. So I think the mixing of the two is going to be confusing. That would be my kind of 2 cents. So I don't know how other members of the committee feel. I want to get this onto the ballot, but I also want to make sure it's right. And I'm not sure that I'm comfortable sending it in this.
No,
format.
as my grandmother used to say, you should never do something for the sake of doing something, because as something becomes something you wish you'd done in the first.
Yes. Yes.
So, and what started to sound like an Abbott and Costello routine up here for a while, I do know what that is. Yes, showing my age. But I don't know how the rest of the board feels. I don't feel comfortable passing this out or taking a vote on this or handling this at all today.
Yeah, if I could, I mean, I
So
feel,
I will hold number 75, your committee substitute, for this particular time, because I think it's a little too nuts right now. How's that? In my neighborhood, they call it batsu.
Not going to take a personal offense.
All right, with that, we will close on number 75 and hold it. We will move to board bill number 76.
Yeah, do it.
We're not going to be taking any vote on this today. It's actually it needs to be redone completely. In my mind, I welcome public comment, but what you've heard today is probably not going to be what the gist of the bill is. This whole, if you have something you like to say, sir, we're more than welcome to, but I doubt this is going to see the light of day. Okay, have you signed up for a public comment with? Okay. Do we have?
We have Elaine Rich.
All right, what we're going to do is we'll have you raise your right hand and swear you in. Do you swear the testimony you're going to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right, you'll state your name. Please speak right into the microphone. It's a little hard. And after that, we'll give you 3 minutes for your statement. Proceed whenever you're comfortable.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elena Weirich, and I work at Show Me Integrity, Missouri's cross-partisan democracy reform organization. We've been following charter reform very closely since St. Louis City residents voted to reform the charter last year. We're in support of moving elections to increase voter turnout, whether or not that happens right now, whether or not it happens in the future, and in what iteration it's moved to August and November. Getting people in the habit of voting increases voter turnout, which is something that St. Louis needs. One of the updates that we were most excited about this bill has been approval voting, or letting St. Louisans choose all the candidates they like in an election rather than just one. It's been a huge success in our city since 2020, and we were thrilled when the popular reform was suggested to be put in the charter by the Charter Commission. In the last week, that's been taken out of this board bill. Approval voting has allowed the city of St. Louis to better reflect what the voters want at the polls. It stopped the practice of spoiler candidates, people who are in the race that are there just to take votes away from other people. You might be asking, did spoiler candidates really happen before approval voting was instituted in 2020? It did. In just the 5 years before 2020, 8 separate candidates won with less than majority support in Democratic primaries. That's 8 times that politicians were able to play games with elections rather than voters having their own choice at the ballot box. Approval voting gives voters the chance to choose who they think is the best fit for the job instead of simply voting along party lines. It's also hugely popular. It passed with 70% of the vote in November of 2020. People in St. Louis overwhelmingly support approval voting. We want to make sure that the charter reflects the wants and needs of the residents of the city most fully. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi.
Okay.
May I add?
Were you signed up or?
No, we're from the same organization, though.
Okay. And, have to
You
raise
state your
right hand.
name.
Swear the testimony you can give is the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. I'm Benjamin Singer, the CEO of Show Me Integrity. As Elena said, we are in favor of empowering voters to make their voices heard. This includes higher turnout. But high turnout is less valuable when you have candidates playing games, splitting the vote, and playing spoiler to dilute candidates' power. As we remember from 2017, Black voters in St. Louis City supported several different candidates who split the vote, and one candidate won with 32% of the vote. It's possible that candidate may or may not have won anyway with approval voting, but it becomes very difficult to govern with people understandably questioning the mandate of winning candidates' elections. In 2019, one candidate who tried to privatize our city's airport won an election with about 1/3 of the vote against the candidate who later went on to win a commanding victory for president of the Board of Aldermen after Proposition D was implemented. Alderman Cohn, this was in the original version of this bill. The idea that this change was made in the last week in order to have consistency on the ballot simply does not hold water when you're placing some approval voting elections on the same ballot with non-approval voting elections. We are extremely concerned that this substitute was changed not for the best interests of voters, but in fact will allow candidates to continue gaming the system and diluting the true will of the people of St. Louis, as has happened for decades in municipal elections. We don't have a strong point of view on whether elections should be partisan or nonpartisan, on whether a runoff is necessary, as I communicated to you last week. We believe there should be flexibility and things should be written broadly in the charter. But when we're leaving it to the point where candidates can play games with the will of the voters, that is an unacceptable choice for our democracy. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, well done, actually. 3 minutes exactly between two. All right, any questions of the speakers? If not, we will proceed. Alderman Cohn to Board Bill number 76.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this point, I don't have a committee substitute prepared for Board Bill 76, but I am currently working with the President's office on cleanup language related to the bill and plan to have a floor substitute available that I would like to discuss. So I would like to have favorable consideration on Board Bill 76 today so that we can have discussion on it on the floor of the Board of Aldermen. If the floor substitute is not ready, then I would be willing to hold it so that we can have discussion and get it on the ballot for April.
Okay, so
the bill as it's currently written is what I would put before the committee for approval.
Okay. And so we're just taking your word for it, is what you're saying.
It's been out there for many weeks now. Everyone's had the opportunity to read it.
Okay, so you're asking for a vote on Board Bill number 76 to get it out of here?
Correct.
Besides, I was hoping you would at least announce the summary of the board for those who are not.
Madam Clerk, would you please read the summary for Board Bill 76?
As, you know, not everyone might be as educated as we are on it, so.
Board Bill number 76, introduced by Alderman Shane Cohn, co-sponsors President Green, Alderwoman Daniela Velazquez. An ordinance submitting the qualified voters of the City of St. Louis an amendment to the Charter of the City of St. Louis, updating language throughout the charter to replace pronouns with specific titles, delete specific obsolete references, provide for modern methods of advertisement, use modern departmental names, repealing and replacing sections 1 of Article 4 and enacting in lieu of thereof a new section 1 and of Article 4, changing the names of Board of Aldermen to City Council and making similar changes, providing for an election to be held for voting on the proposed amendment for the manner of voting and for the publication, certification, deposit, and recording of this ordinance and containing an emergency clause.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I would just, remark, Mr. Chair, this is actually a very popular, recommendation that came across from the Charter Commission. It is something that I wholeheartedly support. It's just that there's, language that needs to be cleaned up in the exhibit in particular, and there's been other suggestions from the administration and department heads and others that would like to be incorporated into that exhibit. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm hoping to have a floor substitute ready for our meeting, but in the event that that is not ready, then I would probably hold on this until we can get that cleaned up and submitted to the voters. And
Okay, but as in committee, what is before us is what before us, and
Correct.
thank you. What you just done was what I was
Providing
hoping for to
context.
begin with. So anytime I would like to hear a synopsis and your comments on that. That was all we're asking for. So with that before us, we'll entertain a motion to adopt Board Bill number 76. Please call the roll. I'm sorry, please, I entertain a motion. I didn't hear any. I'm getting slap happy.
So moved.
Who made the motion?
President Green,
Entertain a second.
second.
With that, please call the roll.
Just 76.
Alderman Cone,
Aye.
Alderman Narayan,
No.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Vice Chair Velazquez,
Present.
Alderman Aldridge,
Pass.
Chair Ballmer,
Present.
If she does
President Green,
She heard.
calendar.
President Green?
Aye. I think there's some confusion as to what's happening at the moment. So was the motion was to adopt, there's not a committee sub to adopt, so is there?
No, the motion was just for Board Bill 76. The word committee substitute was not used. So we're
Okay.
adopting, the only thing before us is Board Bill 76. We cannot discuss a floor substitute or committee substitute if we don't have it before us. So we can either pass this out or we can vote it, this is all that's before us legally, is this Board Bill. We can't deal with things we don't have. We've been scheduling these meetings. We weren't ready for these last week. We are here today. And I'm ready to vote. You wanted to vote on everything last week. I'm ready to vote on everything today. So
Yes.
we either are going to do it or not. If you want to vote on this, as a sponsor, we have a vote going, so I believe that has to continue. Or where are we at on the roll?
President Green,
I'm an aye.
aye. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderman Aldridge,
Aye.
we have three aye votes, 2 no votes, 2 voted present.
By your vote, we have failed to pass out Board Bill 76. With that, we will go to, I believe, Alderwoman Velazquez, you have Board Bill number 72. We have a committee substitute for,
I have 71.
I mean, it's the same.
do I have both? I see only 72 before me as a committee substitute.
Well, I didn't change anything.
Okay, 70.
Voted on it last
They
day.
haven't.
I'm as far as discussion today. Yes, we're voting on 71, but yes.
You want me to get up there?
Yeah, please.
They
That-
said they
Yeah.
would have tomorrow night
Whatever we're going to discuss, let's get discussion, then we'll take our votes.
format, so we were trying to just. Yeah, he just said. Would you be willing to do
All right, well, since you have a substitute, let's go with number 72 first.
move it to the next?
All right, well, I didn't
And
get it.
tomorrow, he's not gonna move it forward, but it just allows it to move forward. No, here, having the side. Do a motion to reconsider. 76 so that it could be moved tomorrow.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's always an interesting day down here at City Hall.
Okay.
Board Bill 72, you do have a committee substitute in the drive and before you. There's a copy. I could have done an amendment. These are pretty simple. Basically, I'm going to explain what I'm going to ask you to adopt in a second, but we just cleaned up the language both in the summary and in the heart of the text on page 2 to really just adjust it to add we basically swapped 2 sentences or moved 2 sentences to say, no fine shall exceed $500 except for violations of city ordinances regarding unpermitted demolitions, vacant property, or non-owner occupied deteriorated property, or regarding the preservation, ... That rest all remains the same. And then we just basically took part of that last sentence out so it reads better. That was a request from the administration. And then we on the actual ballot language, we just took out the phrase "and better protect the health, safety, and welfare of residents" just to make it shorter, and just put the $500 instead of spelling it out, just to make it more readable. So that is the committee substitute 2, and I would ask that the committee would formally adopt the second committee substitute with these changes.
All right. Do we have any questions of the sponsor in regard to Committee Substitute Board Bill 72? Alderman Cohen, please proceed.
Alderwoman, I'm just curious, why the deviation from the Charter Commission recommendation?
This is actually not a Charter Commission recommendation. This was 72 is the fees and fines related to the fees and fines cap.
So, forgive me, there's a number of these that were not recommended by the Charter Commission, and we're still taking them up. And
this is the only one that we've moved forward.
So, what's the rationale though for taking out or focusing rather on public property and building division related items?
So this came out of a Charter Commission testimony at the July 2nd hearing from Peter Hoffman of Legal Services, that one of the issues that the city repeatedly faces across the board is not being able to enforce things with enough teeth. And partially this is because we have this cap that's in the charter. I believe we've talked about this actually too. And it's at $500.
Putting it in the public domain.
Yeah. And then Peter testified about that a couple of times. So, and the feedback was there was some concern that if we just took off the cap by itself without narrowly tailoring it to housing, that we could be unintentionally affecting. We didn't want to make it possible to target people who may not be able to afford the repairs required of their home, which is why we moved it to non-owner occupied language.
So I've been down here for a number of years. We've sent, I think on 2, maybe 3 occasions, language out to the voters to increase the fines that are provided underneath the charter. For the public's consumption, we do have a statutory cap on municipal fines underneath state government or state law. It's frustrating, I think, having been down here for a long time, hearing department heads not being able to, address some of these, ongoing concerns, whether that's the building division, the health department, or, other departments, forestry even, that their hands are tied. And, I've often said, housing court here is a bit of a joke. We just don't have the enforcement mechanisms and tools in place to address some of the, ongoing issues here. And it's not just pertaining to, you can talk to almost any city department head and they'll tell you the same thing. So I was optimistic when this was introduced, just because I think having something in the charter, as I mentioned during Alderman Browning's board bill, the charter should be a framework. We should try to get away from the level of specificity that is in the charter currently, because inflation happens. There's things that are outside of our control that just happen over decades and decades and decades. And ordinances are there to provide that public input that would allow people to direct, us as elected leaders to be able to hear them out and address those specific concerns. So if there are, consequences of fees or fines being raised, then, as a legislative body, we should be responsive to the people and, listen to their concerns and try to work to address those. So I'm apprehensive only because I feel like the cleanest way to deal with this is to address it through the charter and eliminate it in the charter and then go through an ordinance, to establish those caps.
Well, that is in part essentially what it does. It does narrow it on the kinds of ordinances it affects, but it takes it out of the charter, the cap for the charter for those specific areas, and then we would still have to pass ordinances on the specific fees.
But it's still leaving that cap in place. It becomes a piecemeal Band-Aid situation.
Right, but I feel like no Band-Aid, not doing anything. If we have a chance to do something, it's better than not doing anything. Just in my experience, and I know we share part of a neighborhood, but the vacancy issue, it runs across all wards. And I hear you, it's not perfect. We adjusted it based on feedback that we got from community groups that they wanted to make sure that we weren't unfairly targeting, essentially adding another way to criminalize poverty. So that's why we adjusted it. But it's a problem. So, my feeling is if we know we have a problem and there's a pretty clear solution to a way we can address it, then why wouldn't we?
Yeah, I don't disagree that we need to increase fees and fines on absentee landlords, vacant properties, et cetera. I work very closely, particularly in the Dutchtown neighborhood, with Legal Services of Eastern Missouri on addressing vacancy. And, Dutchtown Main Streets has a whole vacancy initiative that they're working on to address these things. I deal with it every single day. So that is not my concern. My concern is that we're talking about the charter as a document that governs the rest of city government, or is supposed to. And I think that we need to be consistent in how we're trying to, Board Bill 76, which just failed, is trying to provide some consistency and clarity in updating modernization of language. I don't think that Band-Aids are the answer here, but I am going to be voting for this to get it out of committee to have the discussion. I think all of it be voted out of committee to be able to have a discussion with the full board, and whether or not it goes from where it goes from there is, obviously up to the body as a whole. But I think that those are just some of my challenges around it. And you and I have had this conversation, it's, no secret, but it's just something that I am frustrated by, but I, obviously will support it to get out onto the floor and go from there.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion on committee substitute for Board Bill 72? Hearing none, you're welcome to close.
Well, then I ask that you we can formally adopt committee substitute 2, if somebody would be so kind to make a motion.
I move that we adopt committee substitute to Board Bill 72.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Vice Chair Velasquez.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge. Chair Ballmer.
Aye.
President Green. We have 7 aye votes.
By your vote, we have adopted and passed out Board Bill number 72, committee substitute.
Great. With that, then I ask this committee for a pass recommendation of Board Bill 72, committee substitute 2.
Entertain a motion.
I move that we pass Board Bill 72, committee substitute out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
There are no objection. So moved and done. Whoop. We have to adopt the committee substitute first, then we passed it out. No, the previous roll was 7 aye votes. We just voted 7 on the previous. Okay. Yeah, I had 7 ayes and no noes. It was a very ugly Mr. Potato Head. All right, and we had all our discussion we were going to have on Board Bill 71 last week. If you'd like to do a quick synopsis, and then we'll.
Great. Madam Clerk, can you please read the summary for Board Bill 71, Committee Substitute?
Board Bill 71, Committee Substitute as amended in committee, introduced by Alderwoman Daniela Velazquez, an ordinance submitting to qualified voters of the city a proposed amendment to the Charter of City of St. Louis that adds a new Section 2A to Article 2 of the Charter of City of St. Louis, providing for the election of a public advocate, and a new Section 13A of the Charter of St. Louis, creating a new Office of Public Advocacy and granting the public advocate certain authorities and duties, providing for an election to be held for voting on the proposed amendment and for the manner of voting, and for the publication, certification, deposit, and recording of this ordinance, and containing an emergency clause and a severability clause.
Great. So as the committee, I'm sure, remembers, we've had some robust discussion over this bill. This is the Office of Public Advocate was one of the 5 core recommendations from the Charter Commission. Just to kind of clear up some things in the committee substitute, as we discussed last week, it clears up some of the very specific language to allow flexibility of implementation by ordinance at a later date. It also clears up some of the conflicting language with the comptroller in regard to financial audits. This is essentially operational audits, what you might call performance analyses, or investigations into city services, and having a centralized spot for both city complaints about services and investigations, and also centralized custodian of records for sunshine law requests. I do just want to add a little bit that there was a poll that was conducted this past weekend from August through the 5th with a sample size of 325 people. They basically did 2 different versions of the ballot language, and both overwhelmingly voters agreed with the Office of Public Advocate based on this poll. So I would say, in the spirit of the Charter Commission, and also letting the voters be the ultimate decision maker, this poll reflects that. And so with that, I ask that this committee would, for a due pass recommendation of Board Bill 71 Committee Substitute, based on, again, being one of the core recommendations from the Charter Commission.
All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion for Board Bill number 71. I'm sorry? We closed discussion last week, if you remember. We were just doing a short synopsis. We've heard this ad infinitum, but if you have something you'd like to add, please add, sir.
If there's no changes being made, then no.
No, there's no changes being made at this point. All right. At that point, we will go back to entertaining a motion for Board Bill 71 Committee Substitute as amended.
I move that we adopt Board Bill 71 Committee Substitute as amended.
We adopted it last week, didn't we? We should have.
So I guess we look at the notes.
No, I believe we just held it.
Okay.
Yeah, we held. Well,
I apologize.
No worries.
Thank you, Alderman Aldrich.
With that, I'll entertain a second. Please call the roll.
I'm sorry, who seconded it?
President Green.
Thank you. Alderman Cone?
Present.
Alderman Ryan?
Present.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard? No. Vice Chair Velazquez?
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge?
Aye.
Chair Valmer?
No.
President Green? We have 2 voted present.
Change Alderman Cone. Aye.
1 present, 4 aye, 2 no.
Okay, by your vote, we have passed out Board Bill 71 Committee Substitute as amended.
Do we pass it, or did we just amend?
We adopted it.
Okay.
And we adopted and, yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, we adopted Board Bill number 71 Committee Substitute as amended. And I believe we will then move to pass this out with a due pass recommendation.
I move that we pass Board Bill 71 Committee Substitute out with the due pass recommendation. Previous roll.
Objection.
Hearing an objection to previous roll, please call the roll.
Alderman Cone?
Aye.
Alderman Orion?
No.
I didn't hear you.
No.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard? Vice Chair Velazquez?
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge?
Aye.
Vice Chair Valmer?
No.
President Green? We have 4 aye votes, 3 no votes.
By your vote, we have passed out Board Bill number 71, committee substitute as amended, with a due pass recommendation to the full board. With that, I believe it concludes our board bills for review today. Resolutions for review,
We have none.
committee discussions,
Mr. Chair,
sorry.
Alderman Cone, what was your cleanup language bill number? 76. Having voted on the prevailing.
having voted on the prevailing side, I'd like to recall the vote for board number Bill
76.
76.
Second, or I went on a prevailing.
That was correct. So she made a motion and there was a second.
I'm sorry?
She just made a motion.
Yeah, I understand. I thought you were making something else. No, okay. All right. Yeah.
Yes. So if he has.
All right. So with that, having voted on the prevailing side, you're willing to reconsider number 76? Okay. Do you have all that on record? The motion is by the Alderwoman, Shameen Clark Hubbard.
Okay.
Second is by Alderman Aldridge. No discussion necessary. With that, we'll entertain roll call.
Alderman Cone? Alderman Narayan?
Nope.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard? Vice Chair Velazquez?
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge?
Aye.
Chair Valmer?
No.
President Green?
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard?
Yeah, we're not moving.
We have 3 aye votes, 2 no votes, and one voting present.
All right, by that, we have passed out Board Bill number 76.
No, that's, no.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, wait, because you were.
That's right. We sustained the motion. Pardon me. This doesn't happen in committee too often. Last time I did this, I was.
So noted.
Okay, so the motion to reconsider now has 6 aye votes and 1 no vote. Is that correct?
We have
That's correct. She
5 aye votes,
5
2 no
vote-
votes.
5 votes, I'm sorry. And 2 no votes. All right, now we have the board bill before us. Any discussion?
None on my account.
Well, the sponsor has nothing to say.
Mr. Chair, if
Yes.
I could just, there's some confusion here that I want to make sure is clear. What we are waiting on is the updated exhibit to the bill from the city councilor's office that was not ready for committee today. And we have been told that that is going to come to us by our board meeting tomorrow morning with some minor changes. That is why we're asking to still move it forward. What the sponsor of the bill has said is that if for some reason we do not get that exhibit tomorrow, as we are planning to have, then he will put it on the informal calendar and we will not move it forward. But this is giving that opportunity to continue the discussion in the full board tomorrow, provided we get the exhibit we've been waiting on.
Well,
I want to make sure that's clear.
well, but that's tomorrow. Today, we're just trying to see if we're going to pass this out or not. If it's on the floor tomorrow, all those things can occur, is my understanding.
Yes.
If it's not, then it can't. So if we have the motion to reconsider and vote it out to the floor, that's the end of the discussion as far as I'm concerned here today, because what you're discussing is something not in the purview of this tomorrow. That is before the full board, correct?
That is what we are explaining the reason we're asking.
I don't need reasons, I just need votes.
So, we've been waiting on something from the city councilor's office for 4 weeks now. So, we had anticipated having this done last week. We didn't have it last week. We thought we would have it today. So I just wanted to provide clarity for
It's fine.
reason that this is
To
being
me,
asked.
it's very simple. I am chair of a committee. If you have a board bill ready, we'll hear it and we'll vote on it. If this is what people want to vote out and is going to committee, then all that can occur before the full board. So where are we at on this? Last time I checked, if we pass this out?
I'd like to make a,
There's a motion to reconsider, the motion to reconsider is passed.
Yes, it has. So at this point,
I'd like to make a motion that
make a move to do pass recommendation for Board Bill 76.
I'd like to make a motion that we pass out Board Bill 76 with a do pass recommendation.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Cone,
Aye.
Alderman Narayan,
Nope.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Vice Chair Velasquez,
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge,
Aye.
Chair Valmer,
Present.
President Green.
Aye.
We have 1 present, 5 aye, and 1 no.
By your vote, we have passed out Board Bill number 76 to the full board with a do pass recommendation. At that point, we will go back to where we were. Committee discussions? We have none? Do we have any written testimony to acknowledge?
We have 2 written testimonies.
Okay, and those are in the drive?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Any announcements? I will not entertain any announcements, thank you.
I just wanted to make an announcement. Appreciate your efficiency as a new member of this committee, Mr. Chairman, and looking forward to more meetings like this, so.
No worries, thank you, sir. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
No objections.
Roll call?
Previous roll.
All right, by your move, we have adjourned the meeting. Thank you very much.